And good morning again. Happy New Year. Well, the Des Moines Register is out today with a new poll as we're just hours away now from the Iowa caucuses. In the top spot, Mitt Romney is at 24%, followed closely behind by Congressman Ron Paul at 22, and now former Senator Rick Santorum at 15, and he is closing fast. Rounding out the rest of the field, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann, and John Huntsman. This morning, we are joined by supporters from three of the top candidates. Senator Rand Paul, the son of Ron Paul. He's in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Romney supporter, former Senator Jim Talent in St. Louis, and former Congressman J.C. Watts, who is the surrogate for Newt Gingrich. He's in Oklahoma City. Let's go first to Senator Paul. Senator Paul, your dad obviously has a shot at winning Iowa now, but the pollsters out there seem to think that Rick Santorum has really caught the momentum, and he's been closing fast here in the last 2 days. They say if you measure just the last 2 days, he's actually in second place. What do you think happened? I thought your dad was the darling of the evangelical Christian vote, which is such a big vote out there, and a lot of conservatives. What's happening?
Well, I think if you look at it, we've had several front runners. We've had several people surge to the top. And I think this is the best time to be surging to the top. And Ron Paul has surged probably as much as anyone in the last 2 or 3 weeks and has been the front runner or near being the front runner in Iowa. He's closing the gap in New Hampshire. So I think he's surging at precisely the right time.
Well, if Rick Santorum does wind up either winning out there or running ahead of your dad, will he be the sort of anybody but Romney candidate going into New Hampshire?
Well, I think he has a lot of things to overcome. I mean, he was, in his last election, defeated by over 20 points. He was a big supporter of Arlen Specter against Pat Toomey. He's really been a big government type of moderate, and a lot of people don't know that because he hasn't surged to the top yet, so he hasn't had much scrutiny. When he has the scrutiny, I think he's going to have some of the same problems that some of the other fair-weather conservatives have had.
Let me ask you this. I mean, your father is a very polite and decent man. He's very nice to deal with. Everybody seems to like him. But I don't know a single impartial observer who thinks that he could wind up getting the nomination, let alone winning in a general election. Does he think he could win?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is when people say that, when you actually look at the numbers and the polls, who's scoring the best with independents and Democrats among Republicans? Ron Paul's the only one getting significant independent vote and Democrat vote, and every year I watch the elections and people say you need independent vote to win the election. You can't win with just Republicans. So I actually see Ron Paul as the one Republican who could reach across the boundaries of party, collect a lot of people who don't vote normally, and really energize the party. Look at the crowds. He says his crowds are growing by the hundreds, and then you interview someone like Santorum's got 5 people and they're telling him to be quiet, they're watching the football game. So, I mean, Ron Paul is having these big, huge crowds in Iowa and really exciting a lot of young people and new people. So I think there is a lot of momentum, and I think he could win by bringing in the independents.
But you would have to concede he is far beyond the mainstream in the Republican Party. Is he even a Republican, or is he a libertarian?
I would say he's different in the sense that he believes with foreign policy we should only go to war if Congress declares war. And because he believes that way, he has a reluctance to go to war. But I think there are a lot of Americans who are tired after 10 years. We lost 5,000 soldiers, or nearly 5,000 soldiers in Iraq. The rest of the Republican field is beating the drums and jumping up and down and saying, oh no, I'll bomb Iran first. Well, beginning a new war should be something that is done very reluctantly in consultation with Congress, and I think we don't want people who are eager to go to war, and I think many Republicans also understand that. That's why his crowds are growing, but also you're seeing Democrats and independents want someone who is wise, who is not reckless. Someone who will control our nuclear weapons should not be someone who's trigger happy and wants to start a war every moment.
All right, well, let me talk to J.C. Watts, because he is, and I have to state this, you are one of the few people, Congressman Watts, who served with Newt Gingrich when he was in the Congress, who have been out campaigning for him. I want to ask you about some of what Rand Paul just said, but why is that? Why are we seeing so few who knew Newt Gingrich when he was in the Congress out working for him right now?
Well, Bob, you would have to ask them, but I can tell you why I'm supporting Newt Gingrich, because I think Newt Gingrich has a proven track record of changing Washington and getting results. All the things we're talking about on a national level today, balanced budgets, tax relief, paying down our national debt, entitlement reform. When Newt was Speaker, he did those things. We had balanced budgets. The only time we've had balanced budgets in my lifetime, and I'm 54, we had entitlement reform with welfare. We paid $450 billion toward our national debt, and I believe, I am one of the people that believes that Newt Gingrich creates, I think, the kind of Republican Party that I want. He creates a Republican Party. He's looking to create a Republican Party, not that looks like J.C. Watts and Newt Gingrich, but one that looks like heaven. And we're going to have red, yellow, brown, black, and white in heaven. And I don't see that in Mitt Romney or Ron Paul or the other candidates that I've paid close attention to.
Why do you think that his campaign now seems to have cratered after, I mean, he suddenly zoomed to the top and he was the front runner out there in Iowa, and now he's dropped 15 or 20 points and he's down there running fourth in the second tier? What happened?
Well, Bob, you said it at the outset. You know, you've had almost 50% of the negative ads in Iowa run against Newt Gingrich, almost $9–10 million. But the fact that he even registered that he still registers, considering the negative ads that he's had run against him, I think shows his stability, shows his strength. I think the polls, I think you'll see that it's still pretty fluid. I've seen polls just in the last 48 to 72 hours that has him either tied for first or fourth. So it's still pretty fluid, and no one knows what's going to happen on Tuesday. And as old saying goes, we'll get the real poll next Tuesday night.
I would just have to say I haven't seen that one that shows him tied for first, but you may be right.
There, I saw one that was had him. It was 17% with Romney, Paul, and Gingrich, all three at about 17%.
Let me go to Senator Talent. Let's talk about these ads. Governor Romney gets up and says he's against these super PACs. He said we ought to just do away with them, the ones that are running all these ads. And yet, there's the super PAC run by his friends. Obviously, he doesn't have anything. He says, I obviously don't have anything to do with it because it's against the law, but it's all his people that are running. And they're running these vicious ads. If he wants to get rid of these things, why doesn't he just tell his friends to stop the ones that they're running now? That would be a good example on how to clean this up.
The governor believes, the campaign believes in contrast. And we have contrast. We have Governor Romney's record. This is a trusted leader with vast experience in the private sector.
Yeah, but let me,
knows how to turn around enterprises.
Senator, let me interrupt. Senator, may I just interrupt? We kind of make it a practice here that we ask people to answer the questions that we ask them. Could you address the question that I just asked you?
Well, I mean, look, the governor has said that he doesn't support those PAC ads, or he doesn't support the idea of the PACs, but he does support the idea of contrasting. And people are going to do what they're going to do. Now, these ads have been fair contrasts of the record of the various candidates. We have Governor Romney's record, trusted, strong leader with experience in the private sector, the guy who can beat Barack Obama. That's what the polls show, and that's the logic of his candidacy. It's what he's running on.
Well, Congressman Watts, what would you say in response to that? Do you think do you think that Governor Romney could stop those ads if he wanted to?
Well, Bob, he could, but super PACs, they are what they are, and I'm not going to sit here and try to say that if the Gingrich campaign or the Santorum campaign or the Paul, any other candidate had a super PAC, that they wouldn't be doing the same thing. I think that's the reality that we're dealing with in campaigns these days. People buy into negative ads. We see what has happened to Newt Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, anybody that's been out front, that's been leading the pack. We've seen the Romney folks go after him pretty good. So it is what it is, but again, I think my candidate is still standing, And the fact that he still registers, that he's still getting votes with 50% of the negative ads being run against him, I think it speaks well for the stability
Senator
of Newt
Talent,
Gingrich.
let me ask
Bob,
you this.
if I could-
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could say, look, Governor Romney's had a strong, consistent support across all segments of the party, really at all times in this campaign, and it is because of the logic of his candidacy and his record. And that's what's driving these poll numbers in Iowa. That's what's driving not just the Des Moines Register poll, but the Des Moines Register endorsement, which accepted the logic of a candidacy that said, look, this is the guy who can beat Obama and turn around the federal government. I think that's the underlying rationale for the race.
You know, it's an interesting thing, and you're right. He has stayed between 20 and 25%. But that means 75% don't particularly like him. Why do you think that is? Why is there such a large segment of the Republican Party that simply does not seem to like Mitt Romney? What's wrong with him?
I think, I agree with what JC said before. I think that the race is fluid. There's a lot of people who are undecided and they park in one place or another place. But again, see, I would turn that around, Bob. I think this is the candidate in a very heavily fractionalized field who's had the strong support all across the party, campaigning in a number of different states. And where he's campaigned the most, he's the strongest, which is in New Hampshire. So when people find out more about him, then they decide that they like him. So again, this is the candidate that can beat Obama, turn around the federal government. That's the reason he's running so well.
All right. Well, we'll find out on caucus night who finally winds up ahead.